4.2 scale diagrams. Looking at the first show you know shown in the box below. The scale for the diagram of the Chinook salmon is 1 to 9.2. We're asked to calculate the actual length of the salmon. We're also given the information in the drawing. We can see that the length of the diagram is 5 centimeters. First thing to understand is being clear on what we're being asked. So we are looking to solve the length of the salmon in real life. So I'm going to do the diagram compared to the salmon. Okay, we are being tasked with what the value of the salmon is, or the length of the salmon is. We were also given the ratio of 1 to 9.2. Here it's really important that we slow down and think about the context to determine which is the scale for the diagram versus which is the scale for the fish in real life. Thinking about an actual sized Chinook salmon, they're quite a large fish. So in this case, we should be able to recognize the drawing or the diagram is going to represent the 1 is going to be significantly smaller than the 9.2, which will be represented by the size of the salmon in real life. So here we're going to connect that ratio to being the drawing compared to the length of the salmon. Lastly, we are given that the length of the drawing here is listed as 5 centimeters. So we now know that we want to make this left side become 5 centimeters. In order to do that, we want to think about what multiplication or division is happening here. And in order to start with 1 and end with a value of 5, we should recognize that we're going to multiply that value by 5. 1 times 5 is 5. And again, because we're going to maintain an equivalent ratio here, similar to an equivalent fraction, we want to recognize that if we multiply the left side by 5, in order to maintain equality, we also need to multiply the right side by 5. So I'm just going to pull up some quick multiplication here. We've got 2 groups of 5 is 10. 9 5s are 45, plus 1 more is 46. And then lastly, recognizing, making sure I'm returning my decimal into my answer. I only had 1 position behind the decimal in my question, so I'm going to match that in my product. So I have 46 on the right-hand side for the length of the salmon. Lastly, especially in questions at the grade 9 level, we want to just recognize salmon is 46 centimeters, making sure to include units when they're provided in the question. Long when the diagram is 5 centimeters long. And just making a pause, an intentional pause to check in and connect to the information we've been given and check that you've actually answered the question as asked. Calculate the length of the salmon. The salmon is 46 centimeters long. From here, we're going to take a look at question 2. So down below, we can see the flying distance from Dawson City to Whitehorse is 540 kilometers. The distance shown on the map is 3 centimeters. A asks us to complete the following to express the map scale in words. It's asking us to identify that 1 centimeter represents how many kilometers. So here we're going to start with, we know that the actual distance, so we've got the flying distance and we've got the map distance. So I'm just going to label them as such. We know that the flying is 540 kilometers. We know that the map distance is represented by 3 centimeters. Okay, so we know then that we're comparing the two things. We're looking at 3 centimeters to 540 kilometers. I know that in this case I want to put the centimeters first because in this part of the question, they've identified the centimeters on the left. So I'm going to go 1 centimeter equals unknown kilometers. And now I'm going to bring in the information I know. I know that I have 3 centimeters on the map, and I know that I have 540 kilometers in real life. From here, I'm going to start on the left-hand side because we have both pieces of information. So thinking about if I'm starting at 3 centimeters and I end at 1, we've divided that value by 3. So we're going to do the same thing on the right-hand side and divide by 3. When we take 540 and divide by 3, we are left with a value of 188 kilometers. So the answer for A, on the map, one scale represents 180 kilometers. So on map, 1 centimeter represents 180 kilometers. And that's all for A. Taking a look at B. What is the scale factor? So again, the scale factor is going to tell us when we come to the original, what are we multiplying all of the original measurements by to become the final answer? In this case, we're taking real life distances and representing them on a map. So we should be able to recognize that we're going from a large space to a much, much smaller space, telling us that we're working with a reduction. That also tells us that we have a scale factor that should be a value less than 1. So we're gonna go, it asks us, what is the scale factor? And then it tells us 1 kilometer is 1 kilometer is equal to, 100,000 centimeters. So we know that the 540 kilometers was represented by 3 centimeters. So I'm gonna come back to that original ratio, that 3 centimeters is equal to 540 kilometers. But then I want us to acknowledge that hint that they gave us. So they say here, hint, 1 kilometer is equal to 100,000 centimeters. So here what they're saying is when we go to use that scale factor, we need to be using the same units of measurement. So we need to be going from centimeters to centimeters and not centimeters to kilometers like we currently are. So we're gonna take those 540 kilometers, and we're gonna convert them into centimeters first. So I'm gonna start by recognizing that if 1 kilometer is equal to, I'm just gonna close this. 1 kilometer is equal to 100,000 centimeters, but I have 540 kilometers. So to go from 1 to 540, I had to multiply by 540. So I'm going to multiply this side by 540. When I do that, I now have, instead of representing it as 540 kilometers, I'm going to represent it as 54 million centimeters. Okay, so now I'm going to come back on the left here. I'm going to come back to 3 centimeters is equal to 54 million centimeters, and I want to be reduced back down to 1 centimeter. So I'm going to divide this side by 3, and I'm going to divide this side by 3, and I'll be left with 1 centimeter represents 18 million centimeters. So 1 centimeter, okay. And then lastly, because it asked for scale factor, we want to recognize that we are going to take our new, which in this case is the map, right? We want to recognize that the original is the flying distance and the map is the scaled copy, is the reduction. So we're going to take the map, which is the 1 centimeter. We're going to divide it by the 18 million centimeters. And we're going to realize that the scale factor is equal to 1 over 18 million, right? And if we were to write that as a decimal, that's where we're going to see that value is so much less than 1 whole because the reduction is making it so small, okay? Hope that helps.